"You don't belong with SEALs," the guard said, laughing loudly enough for the men beside him to hear. Naomi Carter did not lower her eyes. At 52, she looked younger than the name on the faded invitation seemed to suggest. She wore a fitted navy coat over a simple cream blouse. Silver threaded the braids pinned neatly behind her head, and the morning light caught the fine scar beside her left temple. No uniform, no ribbons, nothing that explained why she stood at the entrance of Trident Memorial Hall, holding a wooden box against her chest. The guard pointed toward the public walkway. "The museum tour starts around the corner. This ceremony is for SEALs and their families." Several officers inside turned to look. One smiled. Another whispered something that made his companion laugh. Naomi glanced beyond them at 11 names hidden beneath a black ceremonial cloth. "Please, tell Admiral Vale that Naomi Carter is here." The guard's smile widened. "The Admiral doesn't interrupt a memorial because a civilian knows his name." Then a chair scraped across the marble floor. Rear Admiral Thomas Vale had risen in the front row. His face had gone still. Go's second commander stood beside him, then a third. Within seconds, every senior officer in the hall was on his feet. Vale lifted his hand in a perfect salute. 10 commanders followed. The guard stopped laughing. "Before we continue, be honest. If you saw someone being treated this way, would you speak up or stay silent? Tell us in the comments." 27 minutes earlier, Naomi had almost driven home. She sat across from the naval base with both hands resting on the steering wheel. Families passed beneath rows of flags carrying photographs and flowers. Beyond them, the Atlantic appeared grey and unsettled. On the passenger seat lay the invitation that had brought her there. It bore no official seal and no return address. Her name was written by hand above a single sentence. "They are finally bringing the 11 into the light. You should be there." The handwriting belonged to Command Master Chief Owen Hale. Owen had died 6 months earlier. That did not make the letter a mystery. It made it a final order. Owen had always prepared for the people he loved, long before they knew preparation was needed. Naomi opened the wooden box on her lap. Inside rested a hand-cut silver trident with one broken point. 11 sets of initials circled its edge. 4 words had been engraved across the back, for the one who returned. For 22 years, Naomi had kept it hidden with a commendation she was forbidden to display. Her daughter knew that she had served as a Navy diving medical officer. Her patients knew that an old injury prevented her from kneeling for long. Nobody outside a sealed circle knew why 8 former SEALs called her every November 9th at exactly 2:17 in the morning. Today, Operation Night Current was being declassified. The final 11 names would be added to the memorial. Naomi closed the box. She had spent most of her life helping injured people return to rooms they feared entering. Now she had to take her own advice. She stepped from the car. The first security checkpoint waved her through after examining her retired military identification. The second directed her toward Trident Hall. At the final table, Petty Officer Mason Trent studied her handwritten invitation and frowned. "Where did you get this?" "It was mailed to me." Official invitations have an embossed seal. This one came from Owen Hale. One of the 2 sailors beside him looked up. "Master Chief Hale passed away." "I know." Trent turned the card over as if expecting to find the joke on the back. "What was your unit?" "Naval Experimental Diving Unit. Medical Recovery." "So you weren't a SEAL?" "No." The answer changed his manner immediately. A retired captain stepped around Naomi and presented a gold-edged credential. Trent straightened, thanked him for his service, and welcomed him inside. When he faced Naomi again, the politeness was gone. "Ma'am, this is a closed memorial, not a general veterans gathering." "I understand." "Then you understand why you can't enter." Naomi could see Owen's widow sitting in the second row. Margaret Hale was studying the program in her lap, unaware that Naomi stood less than 40 feet away. "Admiral Vale will recognize my name," Naomi said. Trent gave a short laugh. "Everyone who comes through that gate claims to know an admiral." The sailors beside him said nothing. One looked uncomfortable, but neither interrupted. Trent slid the invitation back across the table. Behind Naomi, the line had begun to grow. She could feel strangers watching the delay. A woman carrying flowers shifted impatiently. A retired officer studied Naomi's clothes, then looked away. One of Trent's sailors opened his mouth, as if he might suggest calling inside. but a glance from Trent silenced him. "There's a volunteer check-in near the service entrance," Trent added. "If you're here to help with refreshments, they may still need people." The assumption was familiar. Naomi had heard gentler versions in hospital corridors and briefing rooms throughout her career. People asked whether she was a nurse while her male interns were called doctor. They handed her luggage at conferences. They praised her composure before discovering she was the person in command. She had survived all of it without allowing someone else's small imagination to define her. But this morning was different. Behind Trent stood 11 covered names and 8 lives built from the night those men came home. She was not asking for admiration. She was asking to keep a promise to the dead. "You don't belong with SEALs." This time his laughter reached the open doors. Naomi felt the edge of the wooden box beneath her fingers. She could have told him that 11 SEALs once learned her voice in darkness. She could have named the men whose children existed because she had refused to obey an order. She could have displayed the retired rank printed on her identification and demanded a superior officer. Instead, she asked one final time, "Please tell Thomas Vale that Harbour is at the door." Trent leaned back. "Harbour, is that supposed to impress me?" Inside, Margaret Hale heard the word. Her head turned sharply. She saw Naomi at the entrance and gripped the shoulder of the officer seated before her. Rear Admiral Vale followed her gaze. At first, he saw only a civilian woman being held at security. Then he noticed the brass diving watch around Naomi's wrist. Its cracked face was stopped at 217 Vale's. Chair struck the floor as he stood. 2 commanders. Beside him knew the watch from a classified photograph. 3 knew the name Harbour from command training. The others saw their admiral's expression and understood that the woman at the door was no ordinary guest. Every commander rose. Vale saluted. First, Naomi returned it slowly. Trent looked from her, hand to the line of officers. Color left his face. The first time Thomas Vale saluted Naomi Carter, neither of them had expected to see daylight again. November 9th, 2004. Began with a broken radio message from a cargo vessel off the Horn of Africa. Then Lieutenant Vale led a 12-man SEAL element sent to capture a weapons broker and secure missiles hidden aboard the ship. The intelligence had missed one detail. Explosives had been wired beneath the engine room. The charges detonated 4 minutes after the team boarded. The stern dropped onto a rocky shelf. Burning fuel spread across the surface. One SEAL was thrown into the water and recovered by the extraction craft. The other 11 vanished inside, as steel compartments flooded around them. 30 miles away, aboard the support ship Meridian, Naomi stood in the operations room while sonar displayed the wreck collapsing section by section. At 30, Lieutenant Commander Naomi Carter was one of the Navy's few physicians certified in both diving medicine and confined space recovery. She had trained longer than most people in the room and had been underestimated in nearly all of them. Some saw a young black woman. Some saw a doctor who should remain safely aboard ship. Almost no one saw the person best qualified to enter the wreck. The nearest rescue team was more than an hour away. The trapped men had perhaps 30 minutes. An engineer projected the vessel's interior plan. "There may be an air pocket in the forward maintenance compartment," he said. "The access corridor is submerged and partially collapsed. Standard equipment won't fit." The captain looked around the room. "Can anyone reach them?" Silence followed. Naomi studied the narrow service shaft running behind the damaged compartment. "I can." An operations officer frowned. "We need a recovery diver, Doctor." "I am one. Someone familiar with special operations procedures. I trained their medical divers last spring." A chief near the wall shook his head. "That passage could collapse before you reach the first hatch." Naomi looked at the 11 fading signals on the sonar display. "Then every minute we spend discussing me helps it happen." The room went quiet again, but differently this time. The captain asked, "Can you bring them out?" "I don't know," Naomi replied. "But I can make sure they aren't waiting alone." Owen Hale stepped forward from the rear of the room. He had escaped the blast because he remained aboard the extraction boat repairing a radio. Burns covered his left forearm, but 11 members of his team were inside the wreck. "I'm going with her." Naomi looked at his bandage. "You need treatment. You need someone who knows their signals. If they're unconscious, signals won't help. Vale will still be giving orders if the ocean reaches his chin." Naomi almost smiled. Then you can tell him when to stop. 14 minutes later, their rescue boat approached a wall of smoke and burning water. The cargo vessel's bow rose from the sea at an unnatural angle. Small explosions flashed inside it, while hostile patrol craft moved somewhere beyond the darkness. The boat could take them no closer than 40 yards. Naomi pulled down her mask. "Do you have a dive name?" Owen asked. "No. You will if we return." At 2:03, she entered the water. Cold swallowed her first. Darkness came next. Above, fire turned the surface into a moving orange ceiling. Below, Naomi followed the hull by touch until her light found a maintenance opening blocked by a twisted steel panel. Owen pulled. It did not move. He signaled that they needed tools. Naomi checked her watch. Returning to the boat would cost at least 10 minutes. She wedged one shoulder beneath the panel and pushed until pain burned through her arm. The gap opened only a few inches. She removed one air cylinder, forced it through first, emptied her lungs, and turned sideways. Steel scraped across her equipment. For several seconds, she could move neither forward nor back. Then the wreck released her. Owen could not fit through while towing the emergency air cylinder. Naomi told him to remain at the opening and continued alone. The route shown on the plan no longer existed. A collapsed bulkhead filled the corridor. Naomi recalled the ship's exterior angle and searched for a vertical service shaft behind the wall. Its hatch was jammed. She pulled the wheel until the skin tore beneath her gloves. It opened. At 2:17, the wreck shifted. Naomi's wrist struck a pipe, shattering her watch. Metal contracted around her with a scream she felt through the water. For a moment, the shaft narrowed against her shoulders, and she believed the ship would become her grave. Then the movement stopped. She climbed toward the final hatch and pushed her head through. Air. It tasted of diesel, smoke and blood, but 11 men were breathing it. Water reached their waists. 2 were unconscious. 1 held pressure against another man's chest. Vale sat against the wall with a metal fragment through his calf. When Naomi emerged, he raised his pistol. "United States Navy," she said. "Medical recovery." He lowered the weapon. "Where is the rescue team?" "You're looking at it." One of the men laughed once, then began coughing. Naomi moved among them, assessing injuries. Daniel Mercer's chest had been crushed against a ladder. Luis Ortega had a fractured pelvis. Peter Shaw was bleeding internally. Vale's leg looked terrible but could wait. "How long do we have?" he asked. Naomi watched the rising water. "Less than 20 minutes. Can the passage take a stretcher?" "No." "Then take the men who can't swim first." Naomi pressed her transmitter. Owen's voice arrived through heavy static. "Carter, status. 11 alive. Multiple critical. Send every compact air set you can find." Owen repeated the number as if saying it would keep it true. 11 alive. Naomi secured Mercer against her chest and lowered them both into the shaft. His weight pulled her toward every sharp edge. Twice he caught on cable. Twice she released the guideline, freed him in darkness, and found the line again at the opening. Owen took Mercer and handed Naomi a fresh cylinder. She turned back immediately. On the second journey, she brought Ortega. On the third, Shaw. A second diver arrived with more equipment, but the wreck shifted and crushed the cylinders against the hull. The gap narrowed further. Naomi remained the only person small enough to pass. Inside, Vale had organized the walking wounded into pairs. "How many more trips can you make?" he asked. Naomi checked the gauge. "As many as there are men." "That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." She sent the swimmers toward Owen with shared air. One panicked halfway through, tore away his mask, and became tangled in wire. Naomi found him clawing at the ceiling. She pressed her spare mouthpiece between his teeth and made him look at her. One breath for him, one for her. Again, again. When his movement slowed, she cut him free and guided him toward Owen's light. The delay consumed nearly 4 minutes of air they did not have. On Naomi's final return, only Vale and Chief Aaron Bell remained. Bell had suffered internal injuries and could no longer stand. Water reached their shoulders. "Take him," Vale ordered. "You're coming together. The shaft won't hold 3, then I'll return." Vale looked at her gauge. The needle hovered near red. "Dr. Carter, if you reach the opening, do not come back." Naomi fastened Bell to her harness. "Lieutenant, you are outside my chain of command." She disappeared beneath the water. Bell lost consciousness in the shaft. Naomi pushed while Owen pulled from outside, until the narrowing gap released him. Owen checked Naomi's gauge and pointed toward the surface. She shook her head. One left. Owen caught her arm. The argument was visible even through his mask. Vale had ordered her to stop. Her air was almost gone. The wreck could collapse at any second. Naomi removed a small emergency bottle from Bell's equipment. It held less than 6 minutes. Then she went back. The compartment had nearly flooded. Vale's face remained inside the final triangle of air, against the ceiling. "I gave you an order," he said when Naomi surfaced, and I ignored it. She handed him the emergency mouthpiece and pulled him into the shaft. Halfway through the corridor, an explosion struck the bow. The pressure wave tore away their guideline and threw Naomi against the wall. Her mask filled with water. When she cleared it, Vale had vanished. Her emergency gauge touched 0. Naomi held her breath and searched the darkness. Her lungs tightened. Her fingertips found broken pipe, wire, then cloth beneath a collapsed panel. Vale's sleeve. She braced both feet against the wall and lifted. The panel rose barely enough for him to pull free. His mouthpiece was gone. The emergency bottle was empty. Then 3 taps traveled along the hull. Owen and Naomi struck the pipe 3 times in reply. A light appeared beyond the opening, like a distant star. Owen had disobeyed his own orders and returned with 1 full cylinder. The 3 divers passed a single regulator between them. Through the final corridor, Owen breathed and handed it to Vale. Vale breathed and handed it to Naomi. Naomi breathed and pushed them both forward. They cleared the wreck at 3:06, 40 seconds later. The cargo vessel slipped from the rocks and disappeared beneath the sea. On the rescue boat, medics worked over 11 bodies. Naomi sat coughing water, unable to feel her hands. Owen dropped beside her and counted the stretchers twice. 11 went in, he said. Naomi looked at the men they had refused to abandon. 11 came out. Not all survived their injuries. Daniel Mercer died before sunrise. Luis Ortega died 2 days later. Peter Shaw lived long enough for his wife to reach the hospital ship and hold his hand. 8 men eventually went home. Before the survivors separated, Owen asked a machinist to reshape Vale's damaged trident and engrave all 11 sets of initials into it. He delivered the wooden box to Naomi. "This belongs to your team," she said. "It came from the team. I'm not a SEAL." Owen nodded. "No, you're the harbor that brought them home." The operation was classified. The casualties were attributed publicly to a training incident. Naomi received a sealed commendation that could not explain her actions, while the survivors were forbidden to tell even their families what she had done. But every November 9th at 2:17, they called her. 11 went in, one would say. 11 came out, Naomi always answered. It did not mean all 11 had lived. It meant none had been left alone in the dark. Back inside Trident Hall, Admiral Vale lowered his salute only after Naomi lowered hers. The room remained silent as he crossed toward her. Petty Officer Trent still held the invitation he had rejected. Vale stopped before Naomi and looked at the broken watch. Still 2:17. "Some minutes don't end," she replied. His eyes filled. "Owen was afraid you wouldn't come. He knew me well." He arranged the invitation before he died. He said an official escort would make you turn around. Naomi glanced at the standing officers. Apparently he found another way to create a scene. For the first time that morning, Vale smiled. Then he turned toward Trent. "Petty Officer, do you know who this is?" Trent swallowed. "No, sir. That is retired Lieutenant Commander Naomi Carter. Her operational name was Harbor." Recognition moved through the older guests. One woman covered her mouth. A retired chief whispered the name to his son. Margaret Hale was already walking toward them with tears on her face. Vale continued, his voice controlled. "Every commander in this room has studied night current. 2 of us survived because she entered a wreck, after trained rescue teams said the passage was impossible." Trent looked at Naomi. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were." "No," Naomi said. "You didn't." Relief flickered in his expression, but that was never the problem. A fighting chi. Sailors beside him lowered their eyes. "The problem was how quickly you decided I deserve no respect because you thought I was unimportant." Trent's face tightened. "Yes, ma'am." Naomi took the invitation from his hand. "You are guarding a memorial," she said. "People will arrive here without uniforms. Widows, mechanics, nurses, siblings, people carrying grief you cannot see. Your job is not to guess which of them has earned dignity." She paused. "They already have." Vale did not dismiss Trent or publicly demand punishment. The petty officer would face a formal report later. But Naomi understood that consequences mattered only if they changed the next decision. The younger sailor, who had remained silent, stepped forward before Naomi left the entrance. "Mom," he said, "I knew we should have called the Admiral. I almost said something." Naomi regarded him without anger. Almost is a comfortable word. His face reddened. "It lets us remember the person we hoped to be instead of the person who stood there. Next time, don't almost." "Yes, ma'am." Margaret Hale reached her and wrapped both arms around her. "Owen wanted to be here," Margaret whispered. Naomi held her tightly. "He is." At the front of the hall, an empty chair waited between Margaret and Admiral Vale. On it rested a program displaying 11 photographs. When the ceremony resumed, Vale set aside his prepared speech. "We came here to carve 11 names into stone," he told the audience. "But stone can make courage look simple. A name, a date, a rank. Courage is rarely that neat." He looked toward Naomi. "Sometimes the person who carries warriors home arrives without the insignia we expect. Sometimes our failure is not that we do not recognize a hero. It is that we believe ordinary people are entitled to less respect." Trent stood at the rear of the hall, listening. Vale described Night Current publicly for the first time. The burning ship, the rising water, 5 entries through a collapsing passage, and Naomi's final return on an almost empty bottle after being ordered to save herself. Before he could continue, a man rose from the 3rd row. Karen Bell moved with a cane and carried more weight than the young chief Naomi remembered, but she recognized his eyes immediately. "Admiral," he said, "may I add something?" Vale stepped away from the lectern. Bell faced the audience. "Dr. Carter brought me through that passage unconscious. I woke 3 days later, thinking my life had been returned to me. I was wrong." He pointed toward the woman beside him and the teenage girl holding her hand. "She returned my wife's husband and my daughter's father. That girl is my granddaughter, born 12 years after a stranger went back into her. Wreck for me." Bell looked toward Naomi. "That is what one rescued life becomes, when you give it time." The girl crossed the aisle and embraced Naomi. Around them, officers who had spent careers controlling their expressions quietly wiped their sighs. Then the cloth fell from the memorial. 11 names caught the morning light. Naomi approached the wall carrying the wooden box. Her injured knee resisted every step, but she refused the arm Vale offered. At Daniel Mercer's name, she opened the lid. The silver trident shone beneath the lights. Vale read its inscription aloud. "For the one who returned." He looked at Naomi. "That was always you." She shook her head and touched the first name on the wall. "No," she said. "It was all of us. Every time one person goes back for another, something human returns with them." After the ceremony, the families gathered around Naomi. They did not ask how many regulations she had broken or how deep the wreck had been. They told her that Daniel sang badly in church, that Louise carried hot sauce in every pocket, and that Peter wrote his wife letters on hotel stationery because he believed ordinary paper brought bad luck. Naomi listened as though receiving pieces of men she had known only by injuries, vital signs and names in a sealed report. Near noon, she found Trent standing alone beside the security table. His posture had changed. The easy superiority was gone. "Dr. Carter," he said, "I gave my statement to the Admiral." "Good. I've been here 9 months. That isn't an excuse." "No, it isn't." He looked toward the memorial. "I joined because of my grandfather. At his funeral, people came from 3 states. I wanted to become the kind of man they believed he was." Naomi watched a new group approach the entrance. An elderly man in a mechanic's jacket, a young mother carrying flowers, and a nervous boy holding a framed photograph. "Then you still have time," she said. Trent looked at her. "The uniform tells people what authority you have," Naomi continued. "It does not tell them what kind of person you are. You decide that at doors like this." She walked away before he could thank her. "Admiral." Vale caught up with her in the parking lot and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was one final note in Owen's Handwriting got harbor. If you are reading this, Vale finally got you through the door. Do not let him make too long a speech. He has been waiting 20 years and will enjoy it far too much. The names belong in the light now. So do you, 11 went in. And Naomi read it twice. A quiet laugh escaped her and broke into a sob before she could stop it. Vale looked toward the sea, giving her privacy without leaving her alone. When Naomi could speak again, she folded the note carefully. 11 came out. At the entrance, Trent returned to his post. The elderly man in the mechanic's jacket reached the table without an invitation. Trent began to point toward the public tour, then stopped himself. He noticed the photograph inside the man's coat and the uncertainty in his eyes. "Who are you here for, sir?" he asked. The man's shoulders relaxed. "My brother. His name is on that wall." Trent opened the door. Across the parking lot, Naomi saw it happen. She placed the broken watch around her wrist and continued toward her car, without waiting to be noticed. Behind her, 11 names shone through the open doorway. For 22 years, the Navy had hidden the story of the woman who entered a dying ship when everyone else believed the passage was impossible. Yet the lesson that morning had nothing to do with classified missions, medals, or rank. Courage does not always arrive in uniform. Honor does not wait to learn someone's title before offering respect. And the people most worthy of a salute are often the ones who never expect anyone to stand.